Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm Diana Skaya. Over 1,000 days of war have passed since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And now, from Western aid packages and advanced weapons shifting the battlefield to increasing European backing for Ukraine's EU ambitions, the conflict continues to evolve quite rapidly. Adding to the complexity are, of course, Russia's nuclear threats, North Korean troop involvement, and ongoing disinformation campaigns. And joining me now to break it all down with these new developments and their broader implications is Vitalii Rishko, Ukraine Program Coordinator at Global Governance Institute. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for being with us here this morning on TVP World Talks.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation.
Vitalii, in some breaking news, Russia launched an intercontinental ballistic missile in an attack on Ukraine today, targeting what appears to be a relatively insignificant site from reports. However, the choice of weapon is striking. What do you think? Why do you think Russia opted for such an escalation now? What's the message behind this, and what more do we know about this strike? What can you tell us?
I think it was quite predictable that Russia will somehow try to intimidate the West for the decision to lift the ban on striking Russian territory by the Western missiles. So they have used almost everything that was in their arsenal against Ukraine, and this is probably one of the key equipments or capabilities that wasn't used before. Well, I don't think that it will somehow impact the decision because it was already taken and there is no point of somehow canceling it right now. We don't know what will happen after Donald Trump will be in the Oval Office again, and if he will continue supporting this policy change, which was really long overdue, and it cost Ukraine a lot, especially the lives of the soldiers and civilians.
But let me ask you this, the fact that Russia launched this ballistic missile, do you think this was their response for Ukraine having used storm shadows, which made its debut on Russian territory in Kursk? Could this have been a possibility?
Yeah. It definitely it was the reason for them to do this, if as you want, escalation step. But honestly, I know for sure that there are quite some options of how Russia might escalate this war or overall tensions between Russia and the West, the NATO. It could be sabotage on NATO territory. Could be even nuclear strike somewhere, not in Ukraine, but I don't know, use nuclear weapons against some. Some site somewhere in the ocean, or there were some rumors about Russia willing to use nuclear weapons in the space. Well, I don't think that this will somehow help them, although indeed there are still some leaders in European capitals who are really scared about the escalation of the war and making it truly a regional conflict, which we see right now is what is happening because North Korea is actually joining Russia in this war.
Vitalii, before we get into the North Korean troops, what can you tell us about yesterday's use of Ukrainian, when Ukraine sent those storm shadows into the Kursk region? What is being said about this in Ukraine?
Well, it is interesting because Ukraine has had a lot of intelligence information also from its Western partners about the key military sites, key military objects and equipment that is on the Russian territory, but it didn't have a chance to strike them actually. So now that what we know about this strike is that possibly it was a very important command post that was used by Russian forces to actually launch their current counteroffensive in the Kursk region. And it was said also that possibly there were some North Korean generals. So we don't know yet all the details, but probably it will be, we will know more pretty much soon.
So we've learned one more name in the next U.S. administration. President-elect Donald Trump has chosen Matthew Whitaker as his nominee for U.S. ambassador to NATO. What is your opinion about this nomination? Do we know anything?
Well, it is clearly important to look at what kind of people will take the position, because it is not only the US president who is deciding actually the foreign policy issues and defense and security issues, but also the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense. Yes, this decision is important, but from what I understood is that the U.S. will continue Donald Trump's previous line, making Europe to pay more for its own defense and security, and making Europe paying more for the support of Ukraine. Again, the defense spending within NATO by the European partners has to be ramped up according to the US president-elect, right? And we knew it already before. And
so how do you view that?
Probably,
how do you view that as Trump coming in and possibly shifting also the policies? I mean, particularly now that Biden gave the green light into using long-range missiles, right, to strike Russia. Do you believe that this is going to change in just 2 months from now when Trump takes the Oval Office?
Well, that's a really complicated question, because, there are different rumors about what kind of policy vis-a-vis Ukraine and Russia Trump will be pursuing. Some people say that it will be that Ukraine will be forced to negotiate and that the conflict will be frozen. Others say that he will contrary use the tactic of peace through strength, which means basically lifting all the restrictions for Ukraine's support and actually coercing Russia towards negotiations, but on a good terms, on Ukrainian terms, and in accordance with the international law.
Vitalii, Ukraine accused Russia of conducting psychological operations with fake warnings of airstrikes. Now, how effective would you say these disinformation tactics are, and what can Ukraine do to counter them?
Well, indeed, it is an important aspect to consider, an important factor of Russia's hybrid warfare against the West. And well, it clearly has some impact in terms of sowing discord for Ukraine's support, whether it's really worth it, whether Ukraine will succeed or not. They are saying that it won't, and that it doesn't make sense, and that's a waste of money. So clearly all these efforts are aimed at somehow downsizing Ukraine's defense, its value for European states, for NATO, for the US. And to counter these threats, the most important is to actually identify them, also through the extensive cooperation network. So as far as I remember, NATO has already established the Excellent Center for Countering Hybrid Threats or something like that. So this is one of the ways to go.
Now, let's get into the North Korean troops that you mentioned here. So Russia is really bolstering its forces here in, of course, Ukraine's eastern regions. What challenges is the fact that these North Korean soldiers, what is it posing for Ukraine's defense and counteroffensive efforts as of today?
So as far as we are already 1,001 or 2 days into war, clearly the manpower is important. As you see, well, Ukraine has a lot of troubles in recruiting new soldiers, while Russia has more manpower, and now they've joined by North Korean troops. We don't know yet whether they are really capable of conducting offensive. As far as I remember, it was reported a few days ago that their counteroffensive in the Kursk region was stalling, and that they've bared significant casualties also. But yeah, it is really important to bear in mind that those soldiers are not coming just as soldiers. with the rifles and that's all. But no, it's also actually North Korea providing necessary ammunition, artillery, shells, and this kind of equipment. And more broadly speaking, also Iran is supporting Russia. Russia's military-industrial complex together with North Korea. So all of these issues are very complex, and they do have certain impact on the war.
During a phone call that the Ukrainian Pravda reported, of course, between Ukraine President Zelensky and Polish Premier Donald Tusk, of course, they spoke about the future of the war, about the aid package that Poland has, the 45th aid package that Poland has granted to Ukraine. But now, Vitalii, tell me, what does Ukraine expect and need from Poland moving forward, and of course, in light of the conversation that Zelensky held with the Polish Premier?
So in general, there are so many equipments that Ukraine needs. There's no such capability that is not necessary right now, because it is clearly the war of attrition and the war of resources. So each capability is equally important, and it only works in the combination. So for now, I think the most important is training of the Ukrainian forces. Also developing deeper security, economic and defense cooperation. So one of the aspects could be interception of Russian missiles in the Ukrainian airspace. And finally, what is also very important is further transfer of MiG-29 fighter jets, which are critical also for Ukraine's air defense. So all these efforts, they are just the part of the Ukrainian-Poland security cooperation agreement that was adopted in line with J7 declaration in order to guarantee security guarantees to Ukraine, which is rather security commitments, and also in accordance with NATO Vilnius Summit of 2023.
Thank you so much, Vitalii Rishko, Ukraine Program Coordinator, for being with us here this morning on TVP World Talks.
Thank you.
And this completes this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skye. Don't go away. Up next, news with Claudia Czerwinska.